claims and to be able to speak to each one of them. Is that correct?
Well, just briefly, I just have a few little things that I wrote down, a few notes that I jotted down. So I'm ready to go.
Okay, great. That's what I need to know. So let's go ahead. Go ahead and please respond if you would.
Okay. Number one, the first claim was I used my platform, social media, to spread conspiracy that undermined the presidential election, including urging the arrest of members of the press for their presidential election coverage. Number one, it's not a baseless conspiracy theory, number one. There is plenty of evidence to suggest that those elections that took place in those swing states were invalid. However, the courts were unwilling to listen to that evidence. And if I'm wrong in feeling that, I'm wrong with about half of the American populace who has been polled recently and felt that it necessitated a hearing within the Congress of our United States. As far as, what does it say here? Urging the arrest of members of the press. Can you please go back to that one tweet, I guess, that speaks to that, because I'd like to see that again, please. Rico, would you mind?
Yes, Mr. Mayor and Councilmember Martinez, let me look for that, and I'll pull it up on my screen. If anyone sees it before I do, please tell me.
Jessica, which one was it again, please? This is on calling the press?
Yes, this is on number one. The the allegation made is that I'm urging the arrest of members of the press for their presidential election coverage.
Mr. Mayor, looks like maybe it is this one here on the right-hand side.
December 19th is what I have in my notes. Yes, this is the one. Do you have it there? Do you see it, Jessica?
Yes, I see it. So it states in 1864, President Lincoln ordered members of the press to be arrested for treason and commanded forthwith to arrest and imprison in any fort or military prison in your command the editors, proprietors, and publishers of the aforesaid newspapers. And then underneath it, it says executive order, arrest, imprisonment of irresponsible newspaper reporters and editors. And what was my response to that, please?
I believe this was a retweet. I don't see a response necessarily to this tweet. I just see it as a retweet.
It indicates Jessica Martinez retweeted.
Okay, number two, violated LA County stay-at-home order by going to DC. From what I understand, to attend a rally or a protest out of doors is not a violation of the LA County order. From what I understand, that's perfectly legal. Let me go back, sorry. So let's see, and number 3, City Council is a nonpartisan position, and I violated my oath with my actions. So can you please do me a favor, Rigo, do you have a copy? Oh, you know what? I think you sent it to me, the copy of my oath of office.
Yes, I do. I can bring that up if you'd like.
You know what? Can I go ahead and can you see? Let's see, where is that? I think you might have an easier time finding it than me.
Yes, I can share it.
Yeah, can you please?
Okay.
Okay, let me read this. I, Jessica Martinez, do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California, and I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties upon which I am about to enter. From what I see there, I don't see that I have violated my oath in any way whatsoever. From what I can see here, if nothing else, by advocating for free and fair elections, that I am reaffirming the importance of our constitutional republic, and that in doing so, I am actually defending the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California. Let me go to the next. Number 4, advocating and attending the Stop the Steal event. The court never agreed with the claims, and therefore it incites violence and would support stopping the steal. Stop the steal. That is problematic. Number 1, attending a rally as a private citizen in support of what is a constitutional act, because it is a constitutional act that is in front of Congress. Now, whether or not they decided to actually take that action or not, it was a legal and constitutional act. Number 2, the court never agreed with the claims. The court never heard the claims. The court dismissed them on technicalities. The evidence has never been presented. In fact, the evidence for the election is not even going to appear before the Supreme Court of the United States until after January 20th. And therefore, it incites violence. You know what? I was there with probably about 500,000 to possibly 1.5 million other American citizens who are completely of the same mind. And it went across party lines. They are not just people of one party. It went across party lines for people who saw these elections, who wanted a fair hearing from the members of our Congress. And we went there peacefully. Now, recently we've had Black Lives Matter protests, and many of those Black Lives Matter supporters that were there, they were not there to incite violence. They wanted their voices to be heard. And recently, not many months ago, I actually talked to some of the organizers of those Black Lives Matters, and I told them, you know what, I support your right to free speech. I support your right to peacefully assemble. Now, if one or two or three or a handful or 10 of those BLM supporters were actually Antifa or whatever it was, and they burnt down buildings and they caused mayhem in the streets, are you going to suggest that all the rest of those people that only wanted their voices to be heard were criminals? If that's the case, then you're calling 500,000 to 1.5 million people criminals that only wanted their voices to be heard in front of Congress. I know that that was the only desire that I had, was to show up and say, please, please, hear our voices. That was my intent. If that is un-American, if that is violating my oath of office, is to see the Constitution upheld, then I am guilty. But you know what, I'll tell you what, my desire is, as an American citizen, to stand up and basically say, please hear us. Hear us. That's all. That's why that many people were there. And it was a peaceful assembly. I am not responsible for those people who broke into Congress and committed those atrocious acts. I'm not responsible for them. I'm only responsible for my actions that I did as a peaceful American citizen. And so I'm sorry, each one of these points to me is invalid. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we've got the claims against you, against Jessica. We have her response to these claims. Dick, I want to make sure I'm being fair here. Is it appropriate then to entertain questions of Jessica relative to what she said, or should, yeah, let's go ahead and do this. Are there, I'm looking at the time and I want to keep this thing moving. I want to manage it. Are there questions of Jessica relative to essentially what she just indicated?
I have a question for Jessica relative to the partisan position, partisan versus nonpartisan. And
Go ahead.
to be clear, she's correct about the oath. And I think what I meant was, what I do mean is a nonpartisan. Let me ask you this, Jessica. Do you agree that we have a nonpartisan position as a city council member?
Yes.
And do you think that it's appropriate as a nonpartisan position for you to draw the line in the sand relative to your political party, or our political party? And how do you think that makes your Democratic friends feel and your Libertarian friends feel? How can you represent, actually, the question is, how can you represent everybody in your district when you draw the line as being strictly a Republican and being strictly and endorsing the things that took place in D.C.? I'm confused about how you think it makes the other people in your district feel.
As far as me standing up for free and fair elections, I would hope that every person, Democrat, Independent, Libertarian, that they would all desire the same thing, and that's to see the evidence presented before Congress or before a court before an election is certified. And that was not done.
Okay.
As a nonpartisan person, I do represent people from all of those parties. And I would think that every single one of them would want to make sure that those elections are above board. And from what I've seen is that recent polling indicates that nearly 50% of the American electorate feels that they should have seen the evidence presented either before Congress or, in front of a judge. And we were unable to see that. And as far as my consideration goes, I believe it's very important that we all believe that the elections were free and that they were fair. So that's my concern.
Well, I'm not going to get into, what ultimately seems like it's going to become a CNN versus a Fox debate. And so the bottom line here is that, and I stick by what I said, and I think I told you this before, is that we have a nonpartisan position. The actions that you take when you draw a line in the sand are not reflective of a nonpartisan representative, because that's who you're supposed to be as a nonpartisan representative. It's what I do every day. It's what I think all of the council members do as well. So I stick by my position.
Fernando, I'm going to interject at this point. I understand your position.
Okay, I got it. You're right. I diversed. I apologize. That wasn't right.
We're just doing the questions.
Okay.
Any further questions?
I got some questions.
Okay, go ahead, Henry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilmember Martinez, so you said that you attended the Stop the Steal rally in Washington, D.C. I'm curious, did you use your platform, your voice, your physical body in any way to stop, deter, cajole people not to commit violence upon our sacred temple of democracy, our national capital?
I saw no violence. I was not present for any violence. I was at the Washington Memorial along with up to 1.5 million people listening to different speeches, after which I left because we had an early flight out. In any event, I saw and was witness to no violence whatsoever. However, had I seen any violence, I would definitely had tried to stop it, because I am not for violence in any case, or harassment, or you know what? It's funny that you would bring this up, because I'll tell you what, when they had protests going on at my home, it's a very it's not a happy thing to go through. And I'll tell you what I did, is that when I heard that they were going to have a protest at Gil Garcetti's home, and this was months ago, I contacted one of the other city council members that sits on the LA City Council, and I asked that person to warn Gil Garcetti to let him know that they were going to have a protest at his house, because I found out about it on social media. So yes, I would stand in the way of other people harming other people or their families. Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate your answer. In light of that, since the events at the Capitol on the 6th, have you taken any action, specifically with your social media, to tamp down the level of vitriol or anger, or have you in fact used your Twitter account to argue that the real perpetrators of the violence were Black Lives Matter and Antifa, which I believe you've also mentioned here today.
Yes, actually, the truth of the matter is that I didn't learn of how horrible the what would you call that? That swarming or whatever it is on Capitol Hill in the actual congressional building. I didn't even know about it until I was blocks away. And even then, because of course we were in the airport and we got on the airplane and anyway, I didn't learn about that until much later, how bad everything was. I didn't see any footage of anything until I was home.
Well, I
And
think
I'll
you said
say this.
you just said
I'm sorry, hold on.
what is that?
Let her finish her answer, and then you can ask another question.
Right. I didn't even see the video footage of what actually happened until after I was back home.
Right.
And then I saw, and I posted that. And because I didn't see any violence, because the people that I saw there were all about, it was like being with your neighbors, like being with the people that you go to church with. They were kind. They were taking care of one another. They were offering and sharing food. It was all about caring for America. They were patriotic, kind, loving people. People brought their dogs. It was the best. I mean, to be among people who love the United States of America was such a wonderful experience. And this went across races, ethnicities, party lines, people from all over the United States that gathered together because they wanted a voice. In any case, back to your question, which was, I'm sorry, I got carried away because of just the beauty of the event itself. And then afterwards, to find out that all of these horrible things happened, I could not believe that actually happened because I saw no violence myself. So I'll say this. I did go ahead because there were people from Antifa that were there. They were there. We saw them. But in any case, we still didn't see actual violence. So I could not comprehend or believe that any of those people who were there would have stormed the Capitol and committed that violence. So yes, I did put that out there. But then I saw another tweet by a licensed journalist who has a press credential who was there, who basically said in his tweet, and he's a person that I very much respect, and we have a friendship. He actually videotaped and put out his video, and it was widely spread in any event on national news. And what he said was that no, they were people that were Trump supporters that were in the Capitol. And when I saw that, I said, uh-oh. And I just went ahead and I deleted the tweet. Now, I only had maybe 500 followers. So I really didn't believe that this would get blown out of proportion and escalated to the place that it has been. So I think, does that answer your question?
Well, let's do it. That's your response. Henry, do you have further questions?
Yeah. Well, I hope you won't. What is that echo?
I'm sorry.
Are you hearing?
Back?
Yeah, there's a little bit of feedback. Hold on one sec. We'll manage it on the IT side. Give me 1 second.
Okay, so hopefully this is better now, but I actually got logged out, so I didn't hear much of her response, but that's okay. I think I just want to let the record reflect the fact that Councilmember Martinez mentioned she was initially mentioned that she was blocks away when she heard about the violence.
So Henry, I'm going to cut you off. That's for your comments. This is question time. Do you have further questions of Jessica?
So I do have a question. So explain to me exactly how a conspiracy works that manages to work across a number of state lines, that ropes in the secretaries of state of several Republican states, and also including several Supreme Court justices. How does that work exactly? Where, and obviously you've done lots of research, probably aside from looking at Twitter. How does that nationwide conspiracy work, where it only works in states where the Democrat wins and not the Republican? Help me understand that.
So I'm going to interject. I'm going to hold on, Jessica.
Relevant. She's making these
Yeah.
conspiratorial claims. She's backed them up. I'd like to hear what the basis for it is.
I'm sorry, Henry. I want to make sure that we are sticking specifically to the 4 claims that have been made against her. And I need for you then, if you're going to ask that type of question, you need to give me a question. I know we're playing court of law here, but I need to know what the relevancy is of that question vis-a-vis the 4 claims that have been leveled against Jessica.
Sure. I think that I really appreciate you for asking that, and I think it goes to the relevance that Councilmember Martinez put into question. Of she's saying it's not baseless. She's saying there's a basis for it. So I would really like to understand her state of mind and also the evidence that she has to substantiate it, or at least her research.
Jessica, if you understood what Henry said, you know what my concern is.
Right.
If you want to respond, go ahead and please do so.
Well, you know what? You're calling it a conspiracy. However, if you watched the hours and hours of testimony that was given in front of the state legislatures, before their committees, before Senate committees, where many people, thousands upon thousands of people submitted affidavits to things that they saw, to things that they witnessed. And then you had quite a number of professionals who are experts in their field, and they provided expert witness testimony in front of these Senate committees. But if you call that a conspiracy, you can call it whatever you want. However, what I saw, I believe deserved. I'm sorry, it was televised.
Oh,
They had hearings in front of, and it was out there. If you had enough time to watch, which I did, I watched quite a number of hours, and I'm sure that you could probably find copies of those hearings in front of the Pennsylvania legislature, in front of the Georgia legislature, in front of many of these other states. And you can make your own decision on whether you believe it's a conspiracy or not.
Okay, thank you. Last question. Did you say on Twitter that in response to a constituent who was concerned about your potentially being maskless and attending a super spreader event after being in a high pandemic hotspot, high transmission hotspot, that you had taken a medication that had previously been used on animals, on horses, in order as a prophylactic?
Basically, Henry, ivermectin is a doctor-prescribed medication that, if you had witnessed recently some doctors that went in front, and it was a Senate hearing. In fact, if you go on to YouTube, you could probably still find the copies of that, or the Senate hearings. And that doctor advocated the use of ivermectin in front of a Senate committee. He was asking the FDA to use ivermectin because what he had seen in his practice is that, and in some of the clinical trials that they have been doing, is that it can be used as a prophylactic, that the people who had taken ivermectin as prescribed, now I'm not talking about the veterinarian kind, I'm talking about ivermectin prescribed by a physician, that if you take this, you will not contract COVID. Right. And it can also be used to shut down the COVID virus if you contract COVID.
Thank you.
So
Thank you.
I took not COVID, I took ivermectin as a prophylactic. I also take quercetin, vitamin D3, and zinc prescribed by a doctor in order to make sure that as far as my ability to not contract COVID was at the highest level.
Thank you. That's all the questions. Mr. Mayor, I just want to note for the record that ivermectin, according to the FDA, is not approved for the prevention or treatment of COVID-19. Thank you.
That's fine. That's fine. We're running a bit afield of what we're here about right now anyway. So I allowed that question, even though, in my opinion, there's question of relevancy. So any further questions of Jessica at this point in time? Any further questions? Okay, what we're going to do next then is, and help me out here, Dick, I have down council comments and then motion, or should someone want to make, well, let's do council comments.
Okay.
Each council member make a comment, make their comments, and then someone can make a motion relative to the censure, the matter that's in front of us. So who would like to go first relative to council comments? Okay, I'm going to call on people then the way we normally do it. I usually start with Fernando, then I go to Kathy, then I go to Jessica, then I go to Henry, then I go to myself. Henry, excuse me. Getting late. Fernando.
All right. Let me make my comments, and I wanted to make them short, but I just want to state to the council that had we not had this issue, I think this meeting would have been over at 7:15. By the way, just if anybody's worried about that. This issue has added what we see here today. This spectacle, if you will, that we're having to deal with, and I'm embarrassed that we are, and I'm also concerned about. And Dick started this. I'm concerned that we haven't taken the time to create council standards. And, Joe, we've been talking about it for a long time. And I think maybe had we done that, I don't know if it would have prevented this, but certainly it would have given us something to draw on as direction of how council members should act relative to social media. We're here because of social media, and how our council members, react to social media and how they use social media. And I'll tell you, this is a huge waste of our time. It's a huge waste of my time. And here we are in desperate times when people are losing their jobs and they're losing their houses, and friends of mine are dying as a result of COVID. I have one of my best friends is over at PIH right now, 57-year-old man, father of 5. Is fighting for his life, and so here we are discussing these issues, and for me it fundamentally goes to Jessica, that by putting things on social media that are going to draw a line, and they're going to entice a debate that is contrary to the way that you believe. As a council member, it's not becoming of a council member. I think, if anything, you should be accused of bad judgment and how you use your social media. And I'm sure you could defend that as well. So for me, fundamentally, I am annoyed and upset at having to deal with this. But this is the third time it's happened. It's like one of my children that does something and I slap their hands and they do it a second time because they know they can get away with it. So I'm fundamentally disappointed that we're here dealing with something relative to how you manage your social media. And by the way, you're not the only one. You're not the only one that I think has exposed this situation on social media more than should have been exposed. And so I that's one of my big problems. But I got to say this, and that is that if any of us on the city council, and that goes for all of us, If we're up here to further our political career beyond the city of Whittier, then I ask you to respectfully resign, because you're representing the people of Whittier. Nobody else. National media shouldn't play into this whatsoever. National politics, I respectfully ask everybody to keep it to themselves. All it does is just entice division in our city, and here's a perfect proof. That's what it's done. Secondly, if you join the city council to somehow, gain political power for your own political party, I ask you to resign, because do the work in the city of Whittier. That's what I'm interested in. I get up every day and I think about, how am I going to add value to my family, my business, and my city? By creating these issues on social media and perpetuating more and more comments, I think it just takes away from the work that you should be doing as council members in the city of Whittier. So I say focus on two things, focus on value and focus on your professionalism. How do people see you as a council member? And you represent, I go back to what I said initially, we represent everybody. We're a nonpartisan party. I'm not going to retract on that. And so therefore, it's your job to represent everyone and not attend or not perpetuate or advertise certain actions that are going to be divisive. As soon as you do that, you can expect exactly what we have today. If that's okay with you, then I think you're in the wrong city. We all are, not just you, Henry, myself, Joe, Kathy. We're in the wrong city if that's what we're going to do. And so I hope there's been a lesson learned here, and that is that, by creating these situations and then going on social media and pushing these things around, all it does is cause divisiveness in our cities. And that's not what we need, and that's not what we're elected to do. And so I'm highly disappointed, obviously. And like one of my kids, I'm not interested in just letting it go. There has to be ramifications for everything that we cause, and that goes for everybody here. So that's it.
Thank you, Fernando, for your comments. Kathy, your comments.
Sure. I supported placing this item on the agenda tonight for several reasons, number one of which is because of the deep amount of public interest in the allegations of what had occurred. And so I thought it would be important for the council to discuss it, to get information from legal counsel, and to have an opportunity for each of the five of us to give our opinions and comments. So at the outset, I want to say that I absolutely support the First Amendment freedom of speech. Whether I agree with the subject matter that's being discussed or not, I support an individual's right to peacefully state what they wish to state. And I've said it before, I'll say it tonight, and I'll say it again. That's what my father fought for on Iwo Jima. And many of you have family members that have served in the armed forces to support this very freedom. I do not support physical actions coming out of peaceful protests, whether those end up in looting or damaging business and homes or the desecration of public buildings. I will support peaceful protests, but I will not support physical actions coming out of those protests. In an article in today's daily newspaper, David Snyder, the executive director of the First Amendment Coalition, stated, "The First Amendment is broadly protective of speech, even if that speech is abhorrent to a majority of Americans. But that right doesn't protect people from criticism or some forms of punishment. Just because people have the right to speak freely under the First Amendment does not mean they are insulated from any criticisms of that speech or any political consequences for engaging in that speech. End of quote. Interesting food for thought. A few weeks ago, I finished teaching for the second time a graduate level course for a local university entitled Democracy, Leadership, and Ethics. And as I was reflecting again on the subject matter of that class as it relates to our discussion tonight, I looked up a couple of references and I referred again to the ethical framework of utilitarianism, which states, do the greatest good for the greatest number of people. As a council member, my focus is on my city, and my focus is to do what's in the best interest of the greatest good. For me personally, I have found that a lot of outside activities take away from my focus on my city. Therefore, I have chosen in my 31 years as an elected official not to participate in county politics or state politics or federal politics other than making a few contributions and extending a few endorsements, because I want to focus on the city of Whittier. In addition, I have found that certain behaviors of certain council members end up costing the city a lot of money and a lot of staff hours. I kind of feel like when I became an elected, I put some of my opinions in abeyance, similar to what some elected officials will do with their finances. They'll put them in a blind trust. And I feel like if I wanted to share my opinions on everything, I could, but I felt that as a council member, it was more appropriate to focus on my work with the city and for the city and keep some of my personal opinions to myself. I would call on all of my colleagues to consider their roles as council members in regards to that statement, and I would call on Ms. Martinez to reconsider her role as a council member, to put some of her opinions in regards to state and national politics in a blind trust, put them in abeyance, and to focus 100% on her role as a council member for the city of Whittier. I think it's important for the public to know, as has been discussed earlier tonight, that the city council does not have the authority, as our attorney opined, to remove any of their colleagues from office. However, that power and authority rests with the populace. That rests with the members of the public that live in particular districts. You, the public, have the ability to remove any of us from office through the recall process. This is the first time in my 31 years as an elected that I have even had a discussion on a potential censure of a colleague. So this is feeling kind of strange for me tonight. I think a couple lessons learned are that we need to be very, very careful of any accusations that we make regarding any of our colleagues. I am not going to be supporting a vote of censure tonight. However, if any actions of any of us are adjudicated in a court of law, and if any of us are found guilty of any actions, then I would vote to censure. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Jessica, your council comment, please.
Yes. Very, very briefly, I do want to make one point. I did not put any of my comments or post any pictures to anything on my Whittier City Council Facebook. Number two, I didn't post it to my assembly Facebook either, because I know that a lot of people see those things. However, On Twitter, I have very, very minimal followers. In fact, many of my followers are not, don't agree with me. So as far as a safe place, I felt to put an opinion or two, or to agree with certain statements that were made, I didn't feel or believe that it would receive this type of attention. Unfortunately, I'll say this. What occurred was this, is that Mayor Pro Tem Henry Bouchot wrote this on Facebook. I hereby call for Mayor Joe Vinatieri and the Whittier City Council to formally censure Whittier Councilmember Jessica Martinez at Tuesday's council meeting for her participation in the mayhem at our nation's capital yesterday. In promoting, he's accusing me of promoting the violent overthrow of our nation and in undermining free and fair elections through the perpetration of baseless, discredited conspiracy theories. Councilmember Martinez has brought discredit to herself and our city. I take this action in furtherance of my oath of office to defend the Constitution of the United States. And then he went on to tag the Whittier Area Community Chamber of Commerce, the Whittier College, Supervisor Janice Hahn, Oscar Valladares, Rio Hondo College Trustee, Jaime Lopez, Whittier Pride, Sustainable City, Whittier Latino Coalition, the League of Women Voters of Whittier, CBS LA, NBC4, KCRW, the Los Angeles Times, Political, the New Yorker, the New York Times, CNN, the Whittier Daily News, the Greenleaf Guardian, the San Gabriel Valley Tribune, Representative Linda Sanchez, Senator Bob Archuleta, the California Republican Party, California Democratic Party, NALEO Educational Fund, the Mexican American Legal Defense and Educational organization as well. Let's see, the Wall Street Journal, The Hill, USA Today, Real Clear Politics, AP Reuters, The Washington Post, The Guardian, Bloomberg, The Economist, MSNBC, Huffington Post, The Sacramento Bee, The Atlantic, Vox, Now This, BuzzFeed, ADL, which is the Anti-Defamation League, the NAACP. So I'm sorry, these organizations were all contacted by Mr. Bouchot when all he needed to do was call me and ask me, were you at the rally? Which he did not. As a colleague on the city council, I think that he should have at least given me that courtesy. In any event, I'm going to make this the rest of this statement, which is, and then also, I went ahead and I basically stated after I was told of this, I put on my Facebook for the Whittier City, on my assembly, as well as my Twitter account, and I basically said that I was not present for any of the violence that went on, that I did not condone it in any form, that I found it abhorrent. And then Mr. Bouchot went ahead and continued to perpetrate that lie. I was in Washington, D.C. on January 4th and January 5th and 6th. However, I want to convey once again very clearly, I deplore violence and did not support the actions that took place at the Capitol building in Washington, D.C. And it was regrettable and a horrible thing that lives were lost. to set the record straight, I have verifiable proof that I was nowhere near the action that took place at the Capitol building. In fact, when this took place, I was on my way to the airport to fly home. Much of the attention given to this partial story has been made by my colleague, Mr. Bouchot. And you know what? I find it very sad because I prayed for Henry Bouchot's family during some of the things that have happened in his family recently, and so I found it very hard to believe that someone who sits on the city council with me wouldn't have contacted me. Unfortunately, could have resolved the truth of the matter with a simple phone call. His obvious intent was not to seek clarity and truth, but rather to politicize this issue and stoke the flames in our community. It is disappointing because as a direct result of this, my family, especially my children, now feel threatened. I have been the victim of crime and have had death threats levied against me that had to be reported to the Whittier Police Department. Councilman Bouchot's reckless behavior has resulted in this type of response. I now ask Councilmember Bouchot to answer for his reckless behavior, his defamatory behavior, and to apologize not just to me, but also to my family and to this community for actions that could have easily been prevented. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. Henry, your comments.
I think those who deserve the apology are the American people. I think the apology needs to go to the dead Capitol police officers who were beaten to death by an angry mob from a rally that our own elected official attended. I think the apology should go to the members of Congress and their staffers who had to cower and hide in our temple, our sanctuary of democracy. Jessica Martinez says that I should have called her. But what about Linda Sanchez, our own councilwoman, Jessica? Have you called her? Did you worry about her family when you hung out with this gang of wonderful neighbors? I find it really hard to believe that they were such wonderful people when among them were people wearing Camp Auschwitz shirts, Civil War 1621 shirts, people who carried zip ties, Molotov cocktails, and who erected a noose outside the state capitol, and I find it deplorable and reckless that you were within 1,000 miles of that place. And frankly, I think you deserve censure before you even got on that plane. You getting to DC was the final nail in the coffin. I don't think you deserve very much sympathy at all. I think you mentioned hundreds of thousands of people out there. I think without their help, there is no violence at the Capitol. I think those people depend on and are fueled by the ignorant vitriol and hate that you perpetrate and people like you. Now let me show you something. This is my first oath of office as a second lieutenant in the United States Marines. I still remember the day that I took that oath. It was a sacred, solemn moment for me, as was the time that I've taken my oath to be a member of the Whittier City Council. And do you know why it puts you on a higher level, on a higher plateau? The reason is because of the consequences involved. We are a nation with very wise founders. We are a nation of founders who lived through religious wars and other incredibly wars of persecution. We are a nation that lived through a civil war that killed over 600,000 Americans. And our founders and our oaths have been created to avoid exactly that type of situation. And if it seems like an overreaction, it's because I refuse to put my sons in a situation where they face another civil war. I don't think this is an exaggeration at all. The reason we have that oath is so that we are reminded that we must choose country over party. And I just want to say, Jessica, I had the common courtesy to look in your face when you were attacking me, and I wish that you would do the same. Now, I just want to address a few statements that my city council colleagues said. First of all, I really, really appreciate your words, Fernando. I think you took an incredible amount of courage and balance to say what you did and to vote the way you did. But I just respectfully do not think we're here because of social media. We're here because of Jessica Martinez. Jessica said, well, I didn't post to my official Facebook. Jessica, you are a council member wherever you go and whatever you do. This is not a waste of time. Democracy dies in darkness. Does anybody here really think I enjoy this? I hate this. This is a waste of my time, like Fernando said. I have not uttered the name of the President of the United States once in the 4 years since he's been elected, and not at all since I've been on the city council. I did not vote for him. I do not support him. I do not agree with many of his actions. But, like Kathy said, I put my faith in my oath, and I put my opinions in abeyance. I've actually tried to keep things calm as much as I could for Jessica. I've talked to people against going out to her house. We have a horrible history in this country of harassing women in positions of power. I think it's a terrible, terrible tactic and an awful thing to do. I don't think anybody should go to Jessica's house. And as I've told other members of the council, if somebody comes to your house to harass you, you are welcome at my house. And I mean it. And I mean it for all of you. And I even mean it for Jessica, as upset with her behavior as I am. You know, I have a lot more that I can say, but I'm tired. I'm tired. It is not easy to do this. It is not my intent to stoke the flames. I do not have any interest in some higher office. As many of you know, I had an opportunity to run for office, for a higher office this last year, and I've decided and committed that I want to be in Whittier. This ultimately is principle. This is country over party. I hope that the mayor and the rest of you will choose it as well. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Henry. I have listened intently. I want to make sure that we have a fair and open process here. And I've spent a lot of time myself personally in the last several days regarding this matter. So I've taken some time to put down my remarks, and I'm going to go ahead and state my remarks and put them in the record, so everyone knows at least where I'm coming from also. So I want to say, first of all, to all the people who have responded on all sides, and there have been a number of people, and you heard it, Rigo read in at least 35 minutes of comments tonight, and then we've had a number of others. So we appreciate your comments and your input. It's important. It's really important because this is a very serious matter. Very serious for all of us. First of all, I want to express my outrage and my disgust with the behavior of a number of demonstrators who stormed Capitol Hill. They broke into the U.S. Capitol, engaged in conflict with those protecting the Hill, and demeaning this sacred, hallowed ground. The U.S. Capitol is the center of our republic and ground zero for democracy worldwide. And I can only emphasize and feel what our elected legislators were going through while that was all happening. What a terrifying experience. And I also want to express my profound disappointment with the behavior of a few of the thousands and thousands of demonstrators who gathered on the mall last week to express their dissatisfaction with the outcome of the presidential election, because there was some behavior issues. While it was certainly within the First Amendment right to assemble on the mall, those who decided to enter the United States Capitol and disrupt the counting of the Electoral College votes violated every principle of our democratic process and should be held accountable to the fullest and greatest extent of the law for the damage and the laws which were broken in their very, very misguided actions. And it's been a long-held American right to protest and demonstrate peacefully. And we've heard that this evening. In fact, 4 years ago, we watched other Americans demonstrate and destroy property during the president's inauguration. And then they held weeks and weeks of, quote, resist marches and not my president rallies. So clearly the behavior last week on Capitol Hill was offensive, unacceptable, broke numerous laws, but you cannot paint those who did not participate in that behavior with the same brush as those who did. Freedom of speech is the very foundation of our democracy. Any effort to limit or censor it in any way should be offensive to each and every one of us. Our city's founders, Whittier City founders, believed in accepting individuals regardless of their beliefs and opinions and resolving our differences with what? Understanding and dialogue, not anger and division. That's what Whittier was founded on, the Quakers. Unfortunately, too much of politics today is based on perception, not facts, personalities, not understanding, and partisanship, not partnership. I respect everyone's opinion here, but opinions, you see, are not the basis to make decisions about each other or in the best interests of our residents. It requires a bit more thoughtfulness than that, and let us not forget, we were elected to represent everyone in our districts, in the city, not just the people that we agree with. That should be the rule. I think we've heard that, but that should be the rule that guides each of our actions. And I'm going to be candid with the two of you, Councilwoman Martinez, Councilman Bouchot, that does not seem to be the case to me right now. I think it was ill-advised for Jessica to go to Washington for this event, to post various items on social media. I also think it was very unwise for Henry to accuse Ms. Martinez of mayhem without ascertaining all the facts. I think both of you have shown poor judgment in not discussing your differences between yourselves. And I think it's a mistake for you to bring your personal political battles to this city council and to this chamber. And it's wrong for you to incite the community over unwise decisions made by both of you. It's not our job to choose sides in this squabble. And this has become embarrassing for all of us. And I heard tonight, and I've written it down here, there's a wasting of time here. So I'm personally offended that we've unnecessarily distracted our residents and this council from the more important work of getting residents vaccinated, making sure that we have the resources out there, getting our businesses reopened, getting our budget balanced, getting our important plans implemented. And we have a number of them, as we all know, as council members. All the residents of Whittier need our leadership, and they need our undivided attention. Both of you sometimes appear to be oblivious to that. The other members of this council and all our predecessors have always left their partisanship at the door when they enter City Hall to work on behalf of our residents. And I advise all of us again to reaffirm that. So regarding the censure, we're here talking about making a precedent tonight. Kathy indicated 31 years. I've been at this several years now, first time ever for me. But we have to be very careful about what we're doing here because this is precedential. I think there is a very, very important distinction to be made between conduct and speech. Conduct must be punished if it's egregious, such as storming the Capitol. And speech, no matter how offensive, is a basic First Amendment freedom that needs to be looked at very, very carefully. There needs to be a balancing here. Censoring speech is a dangerous precedent. And when I look at censure statements adopted by other cities, and they were given to us by our council, our legal counsel, when I look at what's happened with censorship in other cities like Merced and San Clemente and others, they all involve conduct of council members that directly, I'm going to underline that, directly affect the operations of that city and the services to the residents of those cities. While Councilmember Martinez was in Washington as a private citizen, I have not heard of any of her conduct that's been mentioned this evening, the 4 items that we laid out very specifically, that's deserving of punishment. Being offended by someone's politics or opinions, whether you agree with those opinions or not, and whether they should be put out or not, and I know that we've had a bit of going to the woodshed tonight, but those politics, those opinions, don't rise to the level of censure, in my opinion. And that's because I don't see how they directly affect the operations of the city as we have precedent with other cities. So as much as I'm pained by much of what I've heard this evening, I cannot support a motion of censure for the reasons I'm articulating. And I believe that ultimately, the voters of Whittier, they're going to be the judge of this matter. My guess is that they're going to give it far more thought and consideration. They're going to watch replays of this. They're going to talk. I trust the voters of Whittier to understand and to get it right. And I think we leave it up to them to make the decision. So with that, it's appropriate, as we set forth, that it's time for a motion to be made relative to the question of censure against Jessica Martinez. Entertain a motion, please.
You're muted, Fernando.
I move for the censure of Councilmember Jessica Martinez.
Okay, we have a motion by
I'll second it.
Councilmember Henry Bouchot. We have a second by Councilmember Fernando Dutra. With that, Rigo, I'm going to ask you to call the roll.
Let's, before we go down that path, I want to be sure the motion incorporates all 4 points that were made during the discussion. And secondly, that the motion is based on the record presented this evening.
I'm sorry, Dick, would you say that again, please?
2, 1, that the motion itself, as I understand it, incorporates all 4 points that were made earlier regarding the censorship. And number 2, that the motion is based upon the evidence received this evening, including the tweets and other documents.
Okay, and I'm assuming that's acceptable to Henry and Fernando?
It is.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, with that, Rigo, would you please call the roll?
Thank you. Councilmember Dutra,
Aye.
Councilmember Martinez,
3. What was the motion again? I'm sorry. What? I'm sorry, I lost track.
I
I'm
understand it.
lost in my thoughts.
It's getting late. We get it.
Sorry.
Rigo, state the motion again, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The motion by Mayor Pro Tem Bouchot and Councilmember Dutra is to censure Councilmember Martinez. The motion incorporates the 4 points that were discussed and is also based upon the evidence that was presented. That was the motion.
Thank you. Nay.
Councilmember Warner,
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Bouchot,
Yes.
Mayor Vinatieri,
No.
motion fails.
Thank you. With that, let's go to item 15 on the agenda, Councilmember Agency Utility Authority Director comments and conference reports. Are there any comments or conference reports by council members? Let's start first with Fernando, and we'll go through the order.
Thank you, Joe. And here we go, a new year, and I'm looking forward to the vaccines that are coming out, and hopefully a much brighter year than we had previously. And I'm also asking that all of you pray for my friends that are at the hospital, and it's just been a horrible day. I've lost 2 other friends, by the way, today. So having said that, I want to thank all of you, and especially the mayor, for having voted for me to represent the 27 cities of the gateways, southeast cities, on the Metro Board. And I appreciate your vote of confidence. We have a lot of work to do. We have 2 major light rail transportation alignments. We have the Eco Rapids project that's going from, in essence, Burbank Airport all the way out to the city of Artesia. And then, of course, we have our favorite, which is the Gold Line that goes from East LA through the city of Commerce, Santa Fe Springs, Pico Rivera, touches on Montebello, and ultimately ends up at Presbyterian Hospital. It's a big deal that we are in a position to now argue the logic in favor of our alignment. And I want to thank everybody for everybody's support and look for some good things coming out of Metro. That's it.
Thank you, Fernando. Kathy.
Yes, I want to congratulate Fernando on his election to the Metro Board. I just think this is wonderful and so exciting for the city of Whittier. And Fernando, of course, very, very well qualified, will represent the area and the city well. And several of us, all of us, have responsibilities on outside agencies. And I think we all know and understand the value that we gain for the city by serving in these outside agencies. So yet one more to to bring value to the city. So congratulations again, Fernando. I would like to wish everyone a happy and safe new year. And as the elder statesman on this council, I would like to say to all 5 of us, we've discussed this, let's put it behind us. And as we, quote, walk off the dais tonight, unquote, let us move forward as a collaborative council and do what's in the best interest of the citizens of Whittier. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Jessica.
Yes, first of all, I want to congratulate Fernando. And then also I want to say that I do put the interests of Whittier first. That's why I defended our police department from being defunded. Why I've supported local business members, business owners, to help them to stay in business. I do have the interests, the best interests of people who live in Whittier, in our community, and I do put them first. Number one, I do believe it is of primary importance that everyone in our country, in our communities, has full confidence in our electorate system. I'm not talking about here in Whittier because Rigo takes care of our Whittier elections and he does a fantastic job. But I'm talking about in the national sense. I believe it's very, very important for people here. But I'll say this, is that I do put before my own interest, before how things affect me, I do try to make sure that whatever it is that I do is according to my conscience and what serves the people best. Now, there may be conflict or differences of opinion of how that is best accomplished, but I don't, I try very hard not to go against my conscience, whether it's popular or not. I try to stick to my principles. So I just want to say that going forward, I will do my best to work as hard as I can. I will do my best to keep my mouth out of controversy. And just, you know, I'll do my best to try not to put things out there that are controversial outside of Whittier. And I respect everyone else's opinions. Everyone has an opinion. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Henry.
Thank you. All right, so you have the benefit of being time, so I think sometimes you don't necessarily get the scrutiny that's warranted, but I just have to say, I'm just saddened. I'm really disheartened tonight. I think it's saddening to me to think that this impact on our time is more important than the devastating effect on our city. This really was a failed opportunity to bring the country and our city together. I hate to say this, but I think it's the height of hypocrisy for you to put the First Amendment up in your defense of Jessica when we just received a letter yesterday from the ACLU accusing us of participating in a continuing violation of the First Amendment through our limited public comment. I think that shows just about all the public needs to know, and I think in excusing her actions, and this applies to the rest, you know, and allowing one of our own to avoid accountability, we are potentially creating that which we would like to prevent. I am heartened that an overwhelming majority of the Whittier voting group population understands the difference between right and wrong on this matter. I find it really hard to believe that our council members require one of our members to commit a violent crime before a written reprimand can be made on a council member who actively promotes fascist ideology. You were right when you said something about precedent. I think this creates a terrible precedent, and it's a really sad day in the history of Whittier. Thank you.
Thank you. So tough things were said this evening. It's been a tough night. And I think it's been said a couple times, and that is that we represent our districts, but we also represent the city. And we need to remember, as best we can, that our personal interests are not above the interests of our constituents. And my hope is, notwithstanding that we have differences of opinion, but that we will nonetheless respect each other, even when we disagree, and that we will attempt to work together to be collaborative, and that's what we pledge to the people of Whittier, our constituents, and that's what we should pledge for each other. And I'm pledging to, in 2021, do my best to work with each one of you and to make this candidly a better year than we had last year, notwithstanding the COVID pandemic hanging over us. But I have hope. And it's in the context of hope. It's in the context that this will be a better year, that we can and we will work together, not always agreeing, but looking out for what we think is the best interest of the people as a whole. So with that, Fernando, I've given you my kudos on Metro. Excited for you to be on that board. I know how much time it's going to take, and it's going to detriment your business, to be candid with you. And I know what that's like personally, and I know you're going to do that. And I say thank you for doing it, not only for Whittier, but for our whole region of Southeast LA County, which has traditionally been underfunded by Metro. So everyone, thank you very much for a tough night. And I end us on a note of hope. We have an inauguration coming up. Notwithstanding how people feel about what happened, it's time for all of us as a nation to pull together and to work to make this a better year, 2021, and to do what's in the best interest of not only our community, but for our whole nation. So I'm asking everyone to come together, notwithstanding differences of opinion, concerns about election fraud and that, but nonetheless to move forward. And I know that all of us agree with that, and I want to end on that note this evening. So the City Council meeting is adjourned. The next scheduled meeting is Tuesday, January 26, 2021 at 6 p.m. Thank you very much, every council members, all those who are watching, and your interest here in the city of Whittier. Good evening.